Welcome to Scooby-Doo Legend of the Podcast. Today we are going to be discussing Chapter 7. This one is called Now Museum, Now You Don't. So today I have London once again.
Woohoo! I'm back, people! So excited.
Told you, she was going to come back no matter what.
No matter what, I'm back. Happy to be back.
Yes, I was so happy she'd come back.
Yes.
So we did, again, the next episode. We are on episode 7, chapter 7, like I said. So this one is not one that I particularly remember all that well. I remember the villain, but not like the events in the episode very well. What did you think of this episode, though? Mini review.
I thought it was cool. I love they called it the Coolsonian, I think was the name of the museum. But I like the setting. So you get like a sense of, so they're on a field trip during the day at school, which I thought was kind of cool. So you get to see some classmates, and then you do see more of Red Herring in this episode. So the setting itself, I think, was kind of interesting. And you got quite a few characters out of this. So in general, I did like this episode a lot, so...
Yes, so it was the Coolsonian.
Oh, Coolsonian? Okay, I thought it was a Coolosseum or something like that.
So this is... we were talking about this a little bit before we started the episode. In Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed, when they're in Coolsville... Oh, hi!
Oh, hi!
You'll have to edit that out.
You want to come say hi?
You want to come say hi?
You'll edit that out.
Oh.
I know my beauty.
Here's
Well, nobody can see you.
Nobody can see you. That's the beauty of it.
I'm my jam.
And she's dancing.
Oh, yeah.
You're missing out on not seeing this.
Wash my hair. So pretty. I had to say hi.
Hi.
Regret.
If you want to
Okay, sorry, that was scary.
No, you're
Just
not.
in my brows.
Oh, seriously, Carolyn, you look great.
Gotta go put new lashes on.
Oh, that's fun.
I'm good at it now. It doesn't take
Nice.
long.
Oh.
Sorry.
Wow.
Hope you remember where you're at.
Oh, yeah.
Your fun fact.
Oh, kind of, yeah.
Or not fun fact,
This is a connection.
Yes.
Okay, back to what I was saying. So yeah, we're in the we're in the Coolsonian Museum.
Coolsonian.
And then they're going to make in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, they're going to make like a kind of like a second museum, but almost like another part of the museum. But this is once they're like adults and once they're well known and they've found success and whatever. But we see in that film, and I mean it's a huge part in the film, but the Coolsonian Criminology Museum.
Oh.
And so it's basically a museum filled with all the costumes that they've ever amassed. And then it has like the information about, you know, like if there is any history to the monster, like lore to the monster, you know, they'll have that. And then they'll have, you know, who was the criminal, the suspect, what they were trying to do and whatever. And so anyways, it's, I always say that is my favorite film of all time, not just of Scooby. But one thing that I really praise about that film that I'm really disappointed in Hollywood right now is that everything in that film they built. So like when you see them in that museum, they're in like a building in the museum and whatever. Because nowadays they're just like stand in front of a green screen, we'll put everything around you.
Yeah.
And I mean they did actually go to the desert for the most recent live action Aladdin, which I, you know, praised for that because it was like you didn't just here's some sand and act like you're walking.
Act like you're walking.
You know?
And, you know, pretend like you're walking through sand or, you know, so that's really cool.
So I love, in the second live action film, all the sets are just gorgeous because they were made, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't just...
conceptualized, like, for the film specifically, which is really cool. Yeah, you definitely don't see that anymore.
And I actually met a year or so ago, Freddie Prinze Jr., who played Fred in the first 2 live-action films, met him at Fan X, and
that's awesome.
I had him sign like a little picture of him as Fred and whatever. And anyways, he was like, here's a little fun fact about that film, because I was like, it's my favorite film and whatever.
So great. Yeah.
And so actually he said the museum that they actually filmed, or the building, I don't know if it's actually a museum, but the building that they used for the museum, they were the first ones to ever use that building in a film ever. And now anytime they film, which it was in Canada. They did that one in Canada. So now anytime something's filmed in Canada, you always see that building, and it's always like the big building that they use and whatever.
Wow.
But Scooby-Doo 2 was the very first one to utilize it. So.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Interesting fun fact.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually.
So anyways,
that kind of relates to what's going on with the museum.
So yeah, there's going to be kind of another added part to this museum that they're at right now as their kids, once they get older, and are being praised and whatever. And it's a lot of fun. They go through some of the different villains. I mean, you can like sit and pause, and there was one time I got bored and sat and paused like every scene when they're in the museum, and like found each villain's costume, and I could identify who it was and whatever. And if you're able to pause it at certain parts too, the little plaques of information, like they actually like engraved it so you can read stuff about it. Like again, these sets are gorgeous and everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they went through some of the some of the villains in that movie, and like they started with the very first episode of Scooby-Doo. Actually, they were like, "This was our very first case," and whatever. Which, I mean, now you're kind of like, wasn't the first case a sludge monster or whatever?
Right.
But again, it's a whole timeline shift and whatever, and they after like Mystery Incorporated, after the events of that, again, it kind of resets the world after what they do in that series. And so then, yes, their first mystery in the new timeline that they set is, the first episode Scooby-Doo ever. And so they, they can't really be like, well, I don't think they remember. They're not really going to remember their kid time. So everything we're watching, honestly, is just going to be thrown out the door eventually. But it adds. Their characteristics don't really change. We get to see them grow up and see who they come to be.
Kind of like it shapes them early to begin with, then follows through as they become adults.
Yes. Okay, anyway. So there's my little rambling. There's my little connection to Scooby-Doo too.
Yeah, that's cool.
So who do you want to start with this week?
The main characters or side characters? Wise or
either or.
I wrote down the side characters first, or the villain side characters, just everyone that appeared. So I mentioned that Red Herring appeared because they were on the class field trip, and then the ghost, Lord Asakari, I think Asakari.
Oh,
I think that was his name.
I can hurry and look it up.
Yeah, and then we have, so they're on the field trip, and then we have the, is it Dayton? I don't remember.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, the lady's name or his name. The curator, I think it was Dayton. Yes. And then Thornsby the guard, which was like the security guard, and then the Japanese, like, she was leading the kids in like the samurai exhibit, so she was a Japanese like samurai expert lady. So those are the main characters that we get to begin with.
So the villain is based on not like in real life, like this is his lore in the episode, but he was an evil samurai warlord named Lord Asakari. So then, his ghost basically comes.
Yeah. His ghost comes, and there's these swords. Well, I guess Scooby and Shaggy were playing, like, samurai before with, like, I don't know, it was like Link sausages or baguettes or something they were sword fighting with. And so they were super excited to go in and see these swords, but they were, I guess, like, cursed. Yeah, so So they got all freaked out, kind of, and
Yeah.
then the class moves on, but of course Shaggy and Scooby lag behind.
Yeah, and see the villain first. So,
Of course, that's what happens.
okay, before we get, like, too far,
deep into, like, what's happening.
for Red Herring, actually, he's back from vacation.
Yeah, he's back from vacation, which was just the last episode that I watched.
He's been on vacation for 2 episodes now.
Oh, yeah.
So,
okay.
I guess, vacation is over, whatever break they were on.
Yeah, or he got suspended. I don't know. Like, who knows what this kid's doing.
But we also finally see him, like, in school. I mean, not in school, but, like, in a class.
In a class.
So it was really nice to kind of finally, like, okay, these kids do go to school sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like we said, they're on a field trip, and Red Herring, I mean, is at least in their grade.
Yeah.
He might have been held back.
Held back because he's really tall and has a tattoo.
Yeah.
Which I noticed his tattoo was on his right. Did we say it was on his left arm last time? Because I remember it was on his right in this episode.
Yeah, it was on this one.
So I don't know if he has 2 tattoos, but he was running.
Oh,
and
okay.
And his arm was out, but it was on his right because he was running. Anyway.
Could you tell what the...
It was a heart again with like an arrow, like a generic kind of
So
like arrow.
either he has 2 or animation mistake.
Animation mistake. I was just like, oh, that's interesting. So we'll have to pay attention next time. But
Yeah.
He's definitely, I don't know, been held back. He's quite large, like a tall kid, so compared to the rest of them.
And I feel like we finally kind of see, I mean, since the first episode, see him actually being like a bully.
Yeah.
Because he was very like, oh, you stole the swords. And then like when they were going back to clear their name, he was like, they're not going to do it and whatever. And so he follows them and sees Shaggy and Scooby dress up at one point, and then like goes and pulls the hair off a lady.
A lady who looks like them, because Scooby and Shaggy are dressed up like a mom and a baby.
So
that was funny.
Anyway, just wanted to point that out with Red Herring, is that he's back from vacation.
He's back from vacation. So. He's actively at school,
yeah,
like participating. Good boy, Red Herring. I didn't see a teacher, which I thought was interesting.
Well, at first I thought it was that lady discussing the swords.
Yeah.
But then it was like, oh no, she's just like knows, she works at the museum.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, okay, these kids are just
on a field trip. It's kind of like
it's
just
kind of
unsupervised.
like in a way like the Peanuts.
That's
like,
what I was just thinking. I was like, should I bring up Peanuts? Because I feel like that's how the Peanuts characters are. There's no like adult supervision. I feel like that's what happens sometimes in these shows.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with the gang.
Okay.
So I don't have a lot for Fred, but Fred, he has them split up again, so he's getting into that routine.
Yeah.
But it was so funny. He had them split up, and then eventually they pull out walkie-talkies.
Yep.
So, and Velma has walkie-talkies. She just is ready for anything.
Yeah, she really is. Like in this episode especially, I felt.
And so at one point they're talking on their walkie-talkies, and like the screen kind of splits, and it has the little split thing across the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see them both on each side of the screen talking. And then eventually Fred's like, okay, let's regroup. And he just like steps over the split.
Steps over the split. Okay, and then Shaggy's like, whoa, that was fast.
Yeah.
I was like,
funny.
that was hilarious. I thought that was funny. Fred, yeah, I kind of felt like this episode he kind of wasn't as like the leader again. Yeah. He didn't really take a charge. Like you said, he did suggest like splitting up, but this episode I really feel like Daphne and Velma kind of took charge. So I didn't have a lot for Fred. What I did notice is when they were in the clubhouse, he was like ready to just be like, yeah, Shaggy and Scooby did it, or like, let's just let them take the blame or the fall.
Which
and Daphne's like, no.
It hasn't been the first time that he's been like, oh, it could be one of us or something. Again, I feel like it's because of his age.
Yeah.
And we had like a little daydream sequence of Shaggy and Scooby in jail. We had like white long beards.
Scooby had a beard, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
But like, speaking of, like, him blaming or suspecting them, it's funny. I think I talked about this with Anissa, but at one point there's going to be a movie within this same timeline stretch before it splits. But there's a movie called Scooby-Doo and Where's My Mummy? And it's like about Cleopatra, like really it brings like Cleopatra's ghosts, and I mean it's really interesting, and like it really has a lot of Egyptian history within that movie, and it's really random too. This movie was, I mean, it's really just part of their lineup of direct-to-video movies, but for whatever reason this one went to select theaters for like 2 months.
Interesting.
So yeah, I don't know why,
Yeah.
but anyway, so I mean, spoiler alert for this movie, but that movie, at the end, it was actually Velma, who was the villain in that movie, and so I keep like, Fred, like, just wait a few years, it'll happen.
It'll happen.
But like,
blaming everyone, it'll find.
I mean, it'll make sense in that movie once we discuss it, but like, Velma doesn't go to jail, like she's protecting something, you know, within...
There's, like, a reason.
Yeah, well, and she has, like, all these other people helping her and whatever, and, you know, once we get into that story, once we get into that movie, it'll make sense, but yeah, it's just funny because it's like, Fred, it's gonna happen. Like, don't lose this, because one day you're gonna need it to be like, it's one of us.
Exactly. But, don't lose that instinct, Fred.
So, anyway, yeah, it's interesting. He's still blaming... Except it's always been Scooby and Shaggy. He's always like, Scooby and Shaggy. Like, he has no faith in them.
He has no faith in them. They're like the people that's like, they're just there.
Poor Scooby and Shaggy.
Oh, so funny. Yeah, they're like a pair, you know? They have to go together, so... he blames Red Herring again in the episode, which I think that's just like the running gag of the series, so... but yeah, that's kind of all I had about
really
Fred.
all I had,
Yeah, so...
I don't have a lot for Daphne either.
I kind of, like I said, she kind of takes charge and to clear when Fred's like, whatever, let's just let them take the blame, and Daphne's like, no, we're gonna figure this out. So she kind of takes charge, and I think it's Velma that decides to go to the museum, but she's like, no, we gotta clear their name. So that's kind of what I had about Daphne.
I noted that she's still the Scooby snack holder, which I mentioned this before, but eventually it'll kind of go to Velma. It'll kind of swap between them, but like so far she's still like the holder of the Scooby snacks, except she left them in her drawer at home. So Scooby's like, I'll go get him, goes home and gets the drawer, not just the Scooby snack.
It's like the whole wardrobe, like the...
But so... I was like, ugh. It didn't like switch to show us Scooby going to get it, and so I'm like, I want to see Daphne's house.
I know.
We haven't seen it.
We haven't seen it. No. We haven't seen anything like in either of their houses.
But apparently, her family is fine with Scooby going in.
Like, just go in, take the dresser, you know. So that was funny. Yeah, she's like, oh, thanks, Scooby, and gets the Scooby snack out because Scooby's like, I'm not going in the museum.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And then I just also put that she's still grossed out by cobwebs and dust.
Yep, she didn't want to go down into the cellar of the basement of the museum.
Basement of the museum.
Yeah. Ooh, cobwebs and dust. So she's definitely does not want to get dirty. Still a little vein streak there.
And it's funny because I mean, I guess we're gonna say it now, but I've been watching What's New Scooby-Doo, and that's the series we're gonna go from here. I have not said that until now. But that's where we're going to go after that. I mean, we're going to have a movie in between and then the series. But anyway, so I've been watching What's New Scooby-Doo just on my own time. Just, you know, I have it on. I've been trying to color this year. Like, it's 2020, by the way, when we're recording these. This is our first one recording in 2020.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I didn't realize that.
But, I mean, this has nothing to do with Scooby, but last year I had made a goal to, like, stop mindlessly scrolling on my phone and to do something else.
Oh, that's
like when I caught myself, you know, go do something else. I've been trying to do puzzles, but it's like I do one and I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't want to do another,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And so, but my screen time at the beginning of last year was like 8 hours. It was
Oh, wow.
bad. And I got it down to 4 by the end of the year. And so
That's
this
awesome.
year, I want to continue working on doing it. I mean, 4 is still like a lot, but I don't feel like it's hugely excessive compared to what I was.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a lot of stuff with social media because it's kind of my second job.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
so.
exactly. So you kind of have to be on the screen.
But anyway, so I've been trying to do the adult coloring books this year is my goal. When I, find myself mindlessly scrolling or don't know what to do, I'll color. And so I've been having Scooby play just while I've been coloring because I'm like, Scooby's almost like a comfort to me,
Yeah,
so it's like,
yeah.
sitting like stress relief or anxiety reliever, while I have something familiar in
Yeah.
the background or something.
Exactly.
Anyway, so I've been watching What's New Scooby-Doo while I've been doing that, and I really haven't watched What's New Scooby-Doo since, I mean, it's been a few years, but What's New Scooby-Doo is the series that started 2003, 2004, so it was technically the series that I grew up with.
Right.
It was the one that was airing when I was a kid, and so, anyway, so watching it again, I mean, kind of listening to it as I'm drawing, but coloring in, Daphne, this is where I'm getting at. Daphne, still, because they're teenagers in that series, they've grown up, and Daphne still is very, very clean, very, fashionista,
Yep.
Like, I have not noticed it, watching that series before, but now starting this podcast and making these connections and then listening to it while I'm coloring, I'm like, whoa, like, she's still very, gotta be clean, I'm not gonna go down there. There's been lots of episodes where, there's one when they went to Vegas that I watched recently, and she's like, oh, let's go to the shops, we're in Vegas and whatever, and then they, met up with this singer and whatever, and they were backstage, and she's all, would you let me borrow your outfits and whatever, and anyway, and then there's one episode where they're doing a music video, the Hex Girls are doing a music video, and they go watch the shoot, they got invited to watch it and whatever, and the whole time Daphne's like, oh, I hope they make me an extra and whatever, and then at one point, they use one of the Hex Girls costumes from the music video on Velma to lure the villain and whatever, and Daphne's all, why does she get to wear the dress? And Fred goes, because Shaggy doesn't have the hips for it. And Daphne's just like,
hello.
And so at one point, Fred gets kidnapped actually, and so it's the girls and Shaggy and Scooby trying to do it, and so they were like, okay, we gotta lure the villain again. It's another thing I've noticed in that series, I know we're not in that series, but one thing I've really noticed in that series is there's a ton of it leads you on to something else so much, and then the last maybe 5 minutes is oh, just kidding, it was this, and I'm just watching it, I know who it is, but really following the clues as I'm listening while they're playing, I'm whoa, it's just these episodes really, try to play you on to something else that it's not.
Right, and then they twist it right at the end.
And so this episode, there was, it's a vampire who's the villain. Mm-hmm. There's 2 vampires, and they think the one that they had caught keeps getting out. Mm-hmm. And, long story short, it turns out that these 2 vampires were twins, and so they were
swapping back and forth.
Anyway, so they were trying to capture it again, and, it was just Velma and Daphne, and so, Velma's like, oh, I gotta get back in the dress and whatever, and Daphne's I think it's, I can't remember what she said, but she's like, it's a woman's job this time to do it, or whatever. Yeah, she's just like,
oh, geez.
Give me the dress. So.
Give me the dress.
Anyway, after all that, I was just getting at that Daphne stays very girly, very clean.
It sounds like she's just the same. She's a child.
Velma will, once she gets older, definitely changes, because right now she's very cute and, very shy and just very to herself. When she gets older, she gets so sassy.
She gets super sassy.
Oh yeah, she is so sassy.
Good for her.
Oh yeah, she really stands up. Well, and it's funny because, you know, when she's older and like starts to kind of date, she always has these like, I mean, obviously like has storylines of insecurity and whatever, but
Right.
she's very much a woman of like, I don't need a man.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of really like that.
Yeah.
In Mystery Incorporated, they do actually kind of play on like, oh, is Velma a lesbian? And whatever, which, I mean, it was kind of fun, but I like that they kind of played around with it and then just were like, and moving on, you know? It wasn't like, let's just go full-fledged.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, she doesn't have to be. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
it's almost kind of nice that she, like, has that attitude. I don't need a man. And
Yeah.
she's totally fine with that. And she can be strong by herself, you know?
That's
She doesn't need a relationship with man or woman, kind of a thing.
in Scooby-Doo 2, when they're adults and whatever, there's a guy trying to get with her and whatever, and she keeps like, you know, I mean, I'm dedicated to my work and whatever.
Yeah.
And like, you know, what I do is, you know, giving me all the pleasure I need and whatever. And I don't know, I just love that she's very like, I don't need a man to be happy, you know, like
Right.
mysteries are giving me all that I need
Yeah.
and whatever, and she's okay with the gang, you know. So
And just like seeing even like this, like in when they're kids, you can tell like she's the one that's most prepared, most like has like ideas. So it's like you can see that when eventually she gets older, then like that's all she does.
Yeah.
That's her work. So that makes sense to me.
she
That she'd
does
still be like that.
She does date Shaggy for a little bit.
Interesting.
When they're in high school.
Oh.
Except, I mean, obviously, it doesn't last. It's kind of funny because it doesn't last because Shaggy's scared of what Scooby will think.
Because they're the same person.
And
they're like linked. you
So,
know?
like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really like the pairing of them together, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was just kind of an interesting storyline because they're, like, secretly dating, and then eventually, like, you know, obviously, the rest of the gang finds out, and then Shaggy's all, oh no, Scooby's gonna be heartbroken, whatever. Anyway, so, like, they break up and whatever, and then, like, and this is in Mr. Incorporated, that series, and so, like, for a while later, Velma kind of goes into this, like, pity mood of, like, he dumped me for a dog and whatever, and, but then, like, well, then it, you know, again, starts playing with, oh, well, maybe I can like a woman and whatever. I mean, it doesn't blatantly say that. There's this girl, her name's, the kids call her Hot Dog Water because she smells like hot dog water, but her name's Marcy. And so anyways, this Marcy girl kind of starts to help Velma, basically kind of like, hey, you know, let me help you cope with stuff and whatever. And anyway, so then, you know, again, they kind of play on the fact, ooh, maybe we can be a little...
That is so weird because Marcy is Peppermint Patty's friend on the Peanuts.
Oh!
And they always talk about, like, were they lesbians or something? So that's weird to me that her name's Marcy, too. It's like, that is really... Sorry,
Well,
that's
no,
totally
it's-
off topic, but that just reminds me of...
Well, not to, like, go totally into that, but, like... so the season finale of Mr. Incorporated, the gang gets broken up by their parents, or like, you know, mystery solving is causing too much craziness and whatever, and so they're like, you know, it's too dangerous and all this, and so like, well, that's when Fred finds out that his dad isn't really his dad, and basically the mayor of the town kind of more or less kidnapped him and forced his parents to run away, and you know, so he's like, well, in that episode, the mayor, or his fake dad, whatever, Mayor Jones is what they call him, he is the villain in that episode, and so he goes to jail. So Fred's homeless after that. And then Shaggy and Scooby, their parents are like, okay, you guys need a lot of help. So Shaggy gets sent to the military, and Scooby gets sent to a farm.
Oh,
And then Daphne's parents are just... Well, and then, yeah, Daphne and Velma are just kind of like their parents. Okay, just like, you know this, know that, no phones, no hanging out, nothing, very like, you're grounded.
no. Right.
So, anyway, so then once season 2 starts, that's when, Marcy's kind of like, hey, kind of heard what's going down, like, do you need anything, whatever. And so that's kind of how that all starts and whatever. And then, so then Marcy kind of plays a role throughout season 2.
With Velma.
And then, I mean, I've already talked about this in a previous episode, but spoiler alert, Marcy, and this is where I'm like, Mystery Incorporated is one, if you ever watch it with, or if you ever have a kid who wants to watch it or whatever, watch it with them. Because it is like, besides Zombie Island, the movie Zombie Island, it is the darkest Scooby series, the darkest Scooby anything, because, I mean, they play on horror, and they, really, I mean, they do kind of play it safe, I mean, because it's Scooby still.
Right.
But they do take risks, and so they actually shoot Marcy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Marcy gets shot at the end. But again, this is kind of how they like, oh, it's Scooby, so everything's fine. After they do what they do at the end of the series, the timeline gets, shifted and renewed or reset, I guess you could say. And so in the new timeline, Marcy hadn't been shot, so she's alive.
She's alive again.
Yeah. So.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways, after that whole ramble.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, we've already kind of started talking about Velma, but.
Yeah.
Our first word is Jinkies today.
Yep. And that's the indicator that there's a clue. Or, wait, Velma's got an idea. And that was in the clubhouse. She says Jinkies, and that's when they decide to go back to the museum. She's got her computer or whatever.
Which, speaking of the clubhouse, we finally get to see the treehouse again.
Yep.
And we believe this is in Shaggy's backyard.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So, yeah. Also, like, clue. The word clue pops up again after she finds one of the clues.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, this is very inconsistent because, like, we had an episode where it was like, clue, and then we had another episode where we had, like, 2 episodes where nothing, and now all of a sudden it's back.
Yeah.
It's like, clue! I'm like... Consistency,
people, come on.
But I don't know, I just think it's funny whenever, I mean, it kind of plays on the fact of like, it's a kids show, like, Clue, did you pay attention, kids?
Yeah, it was like, just so, if you didn't pay attention before, I'm gonna outline all the clues for you, which happens like at the end of the episode. Velma's like, okay, here's the clues.
Yeah. And this episode, again, we had like suspect number 1 or whatever. We haven't had this since episode 1.
Yeah, so. I didn't, because it wasn't in the last episode. So they had that, and then they sent Shaggy. Well, then they sent Shaggy and Scooby with suspect 1 and 2. And then Shaggy says, like, where are the stars of the show? How can we be suspects?
They break the 4th wall again.
Yep, they did.
Which, we gotta get to that movie to explain it.
Yeah, they broke it again. So that was funny. And I guess we've got Daphne, Fred, Velma we kind of talked about.
Velma knows Japanese.
Yes, we found out Velma knows Japanese, which I was like, whoa.
Yeah, at a very young age.
Yes.
And, okay, it was really interesting. I should have talked about this while I was talking about What's New Scooby-Doo, but we're going to go back into that. At one point in a What's New Scooby-Doo episode, well, so there's an episode with a mechanical clown. It's like a... they're at like a mini golf place, and so it's like you hit the ball into the clown's mouth. And anyway, so this huge clown comes to life, and anyway, so Velma throughout that series is terrified of clowns, and I actually love this. Any series that we've had a clown in, she's been, well, I mean, I should say since What's New Scooby-Doo, she's been terrified of clowns. So they've like kept that with her characteristic, but. In that episode, we got, like, why she's scared of clowns. Oh. And so it does a flashback to a pup named Scooby-Doo. Not, like, an actual scene that we saw, but they actually, like, put them back into like the What's New Scooby or the pup named Scooby-Doo look and whatever, you know. So it does like a flashback, and it's Velma's birthday, and I guess her parents like had a clown.
They got a clown.
And she had gotten, I think, like an encyclopedia or something for her birthday. And the clown like took it and shredded it for confetti. And since then, she's been terrified of clowns.
I'd be more annoyed and angry at the clowns and scared.
But anyway, so I saw a picture of that not too long ago. Like, I knew that was, you know, a thing in the episode and whatever, but I just saw a screenshot of the flashback from that What's New Scooby-Doo episode. And the banner says, "Happy 5th birthday, Velma."
Oh.
And so I'm like, are we seeing after that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're a little older.
I feel like they're
I mean,
older.
she is the youngest. She's
yeah.
she's 2 years younger than Shaggy, and in like if they're teenagers.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, Shaggy could have been 7, but I still feel like he's older.
I feel like he's older, yeah, at
So
least
that's
10.
I think that flashback is something that we won't see.
Yeah.
Like a period of time that we won't see in this series. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting that had 5th birthday. I'm like, oh, okay, so you know, now we can kind of age them a little better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so Velma comes up with the plan still. We also learn she is super strong.
Yeah. I'll say.
She just like grabs the villain at one point and just starts smacking
him.
She did put down pillows.
Yeah. It was like definitely like the Hulk and Loki scene.
Yeah.
Like smashing. Like, but yeah, she puts down pillows so it doesn't hurt as much. But she's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you.
I mean, it's it kind of makes sense because then, like, once they're older, she's always the one that they like jump on and she has to run.
Yeah, exactly. Like what? She has superhuman strength and she's super smart. So,
but we did learn that she has a black belt in karate.
Yes, we did learn that already. At what, 8 or
Yeah,
something?
right.
We're thinking. So she's just a well-rounded human,
right? So that's really all I had for Velma.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have.
The most I had is for Shaggy.
Yeah. What do you have?
Well, I mean, again, they're on a school field trip.
Yep.
We already talked about that they break the fourth wall.
Yep.
And then we already talked about the daydream too, that they're in jail. Mm-hmm. So we don't know if that jail is like an actual place or if they just imagined it.
Like conceptualized in their own head.
And then we also kind of did talk about them dressing up, but yeah, they dressed up as, well, Shaggy and Scooby dressed up as a woman and a baby. Shaggy was the baby, to go back into the museum at night so that the guard wouldn't see them, spot them. But then they also dress up again later with the rest of the gang as like plane attendant, flight attendant.
Yeah, the
people.
whole gang dresses up then, and they all kind of take on the role as like flight attendants. They're all into it. So,
and it's funny because it made me think. Well, in the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo series, for whatever reason, they have their own plane.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Nice, why not?
I mean, probably Daphne had it. You know?
I'm sure.
But, so, in, like, the first episode, they're flying the plane, and I think they call it, like, the, something like the Mystery Flying Machine or something.
That's a great name.
So Shaggy is actually flying the plane in that episode. And then in the movie that came out last year, that closed out that series, finally, at one point they're flying another plane, but it wasn't the one that they had been flying because they crashed that one in the first episode. But yeah, so they're flying a plane again in the follow-up movie, and Shaggy's flying again and whatever, and in the movie Scooby is the flight attendant and whatever. And anyway, so it just made me think, I'm like, wow, they're already getting ready for that.
I was like, they're already ready. There's kids, they're flight attendants, and the pilot, and they break into the cockpit with a battering ram.
Yeah.
And Daphne says, well, I'm so glad you brought that battering ram, Shaggy.
I thought you had got it from the museum.
Yeah.
But then Daphne was like, so glad you had it.
Yeah, I'm like, all right. Oh, that was funny. And then they like put the monster into the seat and they buckle him up.
Yep.
They're like, oh, well, you can relax. And they give him like a drink and
Yeah.
they have like a wet or a warm towel to wrap his face in so he gets all relaxed. And then he's like, wait a second. And
Yeah.
gets up and chases him out. And they get into a raft, like a blow up raft. Like, and that's how they
right.
that's how they get out of the plane. Which I don't know why there was a plane on display, but I thought that was funny.
Well, it's interesting because in the very first episode of Scooby-Doo, which is from Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And that's titled, What a Night for a Night. So, like, what a night for a knight in shining armor. Anyway, so they're in a museum in that episode, and they actually, like, hide in a plane in that episode too, but it's a biplane. And anyway, they like somehow turn it on and anyway fly and whatever, and it's funny too because they crashed the plane in the end of that episode, and then in the Scooby Natural, the Supernatural crossover that they did a little bit ago, they went in. So Sam and Dean went into like a classic episode of Scooby-Doo, one from the original series, and anyway, Shaggy breaks his arm in that episode and whatever, and he's like, how did I break an arm? And he actually references when he crashes the plane in the first episode, because he's all, I crashed a biplane and was fine, and whatever. So
That's funny.
But anyway, yeah, I know, just random planes. You know?
Yeah, it was random. I was like, what kind of museum is this? But
yeah.
whatever, it's
The
fine.
Coolsonian.
The Coolsonian.
So Scooby, I kind of had mostly the same notes as Shaggy.
Yeah.
Except my one added one is that he starts the music for the wrong.
Right, I was thinking that too. Well, Shaggy gives him the money.
Yep.
Like, it's time to run, Scoob.
He's like, it's time to start the chase. Go start the music.
He goes with the music, he rocks over to the jukebox
Yep.
and puts it in. The romp starts, and it's so funny. I was like, that's great.
So that's all I have for the king.
Yeah,
really.
that's pretty much all I have.
So the side characters, we had kind of brought them up.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had the police officer Thornsby.
Yeah.
And at first, he kind of suspects Shaggy and Scooby, but then he's like, oh, they're clean. But then he's like, oh, maybe they did. He couldn't make up his mind.
Yeah, I kind of think he had a lot of pressure going on with the curator. He's like, well, you gotta find out who this is. He's like, okay. So...
yeah, which then the curator, Mr. Dayton...
Yeah.
He was very like, what, you haven't caught him yet? Like, come on, you gotta do this. I'm gonna fire you and whatever.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I was like, oh man, he's like stressful.
Yeah, like no wonder this guy is like, okay, I'll just blame anyone.
Yeah,
blame these two kids.
But he was very like, you have to find the swords. He
Yeah.
wasn't like, you need to find the crook. He was just,
Right.
you need to find the swords.
Find the swords, yeah.
And so yeah, Mr. Dayton was the curator. He kind of just like suspects anyone else that stole the swords. He's like, it's whoever's in this museum stole them and whatever. And then obviously we find out he's the criminal.
He ends up being the criminal.
The samurai ghost. I didn't have anything for that other lady.
I didn't really have much. She just knew all about like the samurais, and she was getting blamed by Mr. Dayton, and she kind of became a suspect because they thought she had taken the swords.
Yeah.
But then she's like, well, why would I take the swords? And then they find out there was an insurance policy for $1 million off the swords. So she became a suspect again, but there wasn't really much with her, I don't feel like.
She was just very like...
She was just like the added character to kind of put blame on, or she could be the bad guy. So
I feel like she was kind of the person in charge of the Japanese or the samurai section.
Yeah, exactly.
And so she was like, oh, my prized possession.
Yeah, I kind of felt like she cared about them.
Yeah.
Like in a way that she wanted other people to enjoy them. So I was like, yeah, that's not her. Definitely not. So
So the villain, like we've talked about, is a samurai ghost. He's, dressed as a samurai. He's red.
Yeah.
Red skin.
He's like red skin and his teeth are just like the jagged, like, jack-o'-lantern, like you would have the sharp teeth, and he's red, so it was really strange.
And he did not speak English, nor did he speak Japanese.
No, he was just like,
yeah.
Because then when Velma was speaking to him in Japanese, he's all, huh?
Yep. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think of this villain? I like that we had a little bit of a backstory to him.
Yeah, I liked that. I think that gave him a little bit more of a fear factor kind of a thing.
He did kind of have a curse upon him, too.
And I think that kind of built on, like, why Shaggy and Scooby were so scared of him. Yeah. Like, even just seeing him, they're like, it's the, Lord Asakari or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, I think that kind of built up kind of the fear.
Yeah.
So, I liked his backstory.
Mm-hmm. So, this is not, obviously, but this is not going to be the first samurai ghost. There's a movie, and it's actually it's the last film before the timeline will shift from the stretch that we're in now. But it's Scooby-Doo and the Samurai Sword is the movie, and that's when they actually, like, I think go to Japan, and anyways, there's a samurai ghost and whatever, and that one, spoiler alert, actually the samurai ghost is real. That's one of the mysteries where it's real, like the supernatural elements are real and whatever. It kind of gets a little out there, like there's actually a dragon at one point and whatever. But anyway, so this isn't the first time we'll see a samurai ghost, but the ghost in that one, the samurai ghost, is way different than the one in this one. I'll pull up a picture to show you. And, like, at the end of that one, because he's real, like, they kind of unmask him, and it's, like, a super old, dead skeleton guy.
Oh, gosh.
Like, it's gross. Like, they animated it gross.
Just go ahead and put that mask right back on.
Yeah, really. Well, he actually, like, I can't exactly remember what happens, but basically he was redeemed in a way, and so, he's like, thank you, and gets to go on to his afterlife. So, he gets to go peacefully.
That's good.
Okay, so this is the one from the movie.
Oh, I kind of like that one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool.
And there is another samurai monster thing, but, like, it's not real. It's in a movie called Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. Mm-hmm. That's actually way far in our timeline. It's going to be, because that's a time when they're adults. Mm-hmm. And it's, like, one of the last movies in the timeline, at least as of right now. But they go into a video game in that movie.
Oh,
they get trapped in a video game, and one of the levels is like a samurai level, and so they have another samurai.
Another samurai. It's interesting that they keep using the samurais.
Yeah. So anyway, so the criminal, like we said, is Mr. Dayton. He knew about the insurance of the $1 million. Mm-hmm. He wanted to get that, and he bought a one-way ticket. He was gonna quit his job and just retire.
Yeah, pretty much. That was the plan. So that was the third clue.
Yep.
That they found, because some guy just came in, Mr. Dayton?
Yeah.
Oh. And they gives,
so
like, the
random.
gang, like, a one-way ticket, like a fruit basket or something.
Yep.
He's like, oh, I'm not Mr. Dayton. Okay, have a good night.
Yeah.
That's funny. So that was the clue. That kind of gave it all away. I feel it's like, oh yeah, definitely Mr. Dayton.
So, I always ask people, do you think he'll come back for revenge? Think he had a good enough reason?
Kind of. Like, that's kind of a big... I don't think he can do anything else.
Yeah.
But I'd be a little annoyed, like... But I can't see him coming back, but I kind of feel like he has a good reason, because I'm like, that was kind of a, he lost his job, and his $1 million.
So he hasn't come back for revenge yet.
Oh,
it was interesting because the last podcast episode that we did, I was talking about the movie Scooby-Doo Franken-Creepy, where that one is a revenge plot.
Yeah.
And after we had recorded that, I was like, I want to watch this again, And one thing that stuck out to me watching that one is, because at the end of the movie they were like, it's the whole motive was a revenge for us and whatever. And
right.
The villains in that one actually reveal like everyone you've ever caught wants revenge on you, and it kind of like pans through the jail of like the criminals kind of coming up with plans and whatever. And so it's interesting. Everyone wants revenge, but not everyone gets revenge. In Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed, we do actually get there's like a nightclub, and it's called the full ghost or whatever. It's weird spelling. Let me see if I can see how it's spelled. Scooby-Doo. Faux, ghost.
Oh, faux?
Faux, yeah.
Yep.
Faux ghost.
Faux ghost, yep.
So there's this nightclub called the Faux Ghost, and basically it's a place where all of the criminals that they've ever captured go just to hang out and basically be like, just this is where we are now, drink.
Oh,
and
kind of like on Shrek.
Yeah.
All the villains and like the poison apple.
Yep. But so in that movie, we get to see that some villains have been released, but they haven't, they decided not to do revenge yet. Again. Except it's interesting because in that Franken-Creepy movie, which takes place in our timeline before Scooby-Doo 2, there's one villain. So he originally was Redbeard's ghost in Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? He came back for revenge in this movie. But then in Scooby-Doo 2, we do actually see him again. But again, he's not in jail. So he was released again. But I guess he finally decided it's not worth it to do revenge this time.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah, anyways, I just think it's interesting. We'll see them, we'll see these criminals out, at least some of them, out and not being like, I want revenge,
Yeah.
We do see the very first episode ever of Scooby-Doo. We see his criminal, so it was Mr. Wickles who posed as the Black Knight, and we actually go to his mansion in that movie, and it's funny because his mansion is the mansion from the opening sequence of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Where the bats come out.
Yep.
And they actually kind of do that. They pan the house and the bats come out.
The bats come out.
But so we get to really get history on him, which I think is really cool because it was the very first episode. We get to kind of go back and be like, oh, here's kind of what he's been up to.
Oh, yeah. And
it's funny because we actually learned Mr. Wickles, he made the best of it in jail. He wasn't like, oh, life sucks and whatever. They had stuff that they could do in jail, for pastime, and he took it up and whatever. And then once he was released, he started to he was trying to make this mining. They have a mining area in Coolsville, and he was trying to make this mining area like a place for kids to come and just kind of discover and whatever. And so he actually spent time in jail and I got to rethink what I'm doing in my life and whatever.
Yeah.
It gave him some, insight on what's going on and whatever. And not to say he does still reveal that he is very upset with the gang and whatever.
Yeah.
But he's I've gotten past to the point of, I've kind of made my way through revenge. My mind has gotten past revenge, and I'm just, I'm mad at him, but I'm not going to do anything about it and whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's, it's really cool that we might get some of these stories for these criminals, having these arcs and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like they've moved on,
Yep.
and they have a different aspect on life because of that. So that's interesting.
But anyway, Mr. Dayton has not come back.
Doesn't come back, but yeah. I like how they took off his mask, and he's a really tiny person.
Yeah.
And he's like, has these little mechanical arms and legs that move the big samurai guy. And when Mr. Thornsby comes back, I was laughing because he's like, walks away and he's all, he arrests him in costume.
Well, and he reminded me of,
It's,
what's his name on the Jetsons?
yeah, well,
The
I think
boss.
he had, oh yeah, what's the boss? Mr. Spacely.
Spacely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But his voice, I don't know who the voice actor was, but I've heard him, I think, in other cartoons.
Mr.
Like,
Dayton?
yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Because I feel like he is in one of the, like, Hanna-Barbera, but I'm not sure.
He also reminded me of, have you ever seen Magilla Gorilla?
Yes.
He reminds me of the storekeeper.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's kind of just like this small, snivelly little man. He had really poofy hair. Kind of like Einstein.
He was, he's older. So, oh, that's Mr. Thornsby. Yeah, he's an older man.
Yeah, I swear I've heard his voice on other characters.
It's Hamilton Camp is who played him. He's in other Scooby stuff, but
yeah, his voice sounds so familiar to me.
yeah.
I'm sure he's been, like, done a ton of voice acting.
Yeah.
His voice was quite unique.
So,
Anyway, that was interesting. He was funny.
so just one last little note to kind of tie up some timeline stuff, actually. So in the first episode, we had the Daily Babble, which was the newspaper printing, the local newspaper printing press thing, whatever. And we actually see a newspaper in this episode, which is the Daily Babbler. So yeah, we actually got some continuity there. We got some connections there that, even though Shaggy and the gang had caught Mr. Conrad in that episode, who worked at the newspaper printing press place, the newspaper's still going, and it's still the Daily Babble. So yeah, it was just interesting. I was like, oh, it's back.
Yeah,
like, hey.
yeah, I remember you guys talking about that, and I was like, oh, it's back. There it is. That's the one where they reported that Shaggy and Scooby were suspects. On the front page. Apparently there's not much going on in this town.
Really. Well, I mean, yeah, not yet, because I know, in Scooby-Doo 2, again, they're very well known, and they have this grand opening of the museum, but when the timeline shifts, they're actually in their hometown of Crystal Cove.
Oh.
And that's, at least before the timeline shifts there, it's considered the most hauntedest haunted place and whatever. And there's the town basically expects hauntings to happen and whatever. And so anyway, so they're in Crystal Cove there. And which then you're kind of like, but wait, how do they get back to Coolsville?
Yeah.
So at the end of Mr. Incorporated, they have this professor dude who basically calls them up after they reset the timeline after they did what they did, and was like, hey, because when they reset the timeline, only they knew that they did, and everyone else is, they kind of come and everyone else doesn't know anything happened, and they're kind of their families are different and whatever, the whole town's different, whatever. And, and so the gang is kind of well, what do we do now? Because they think at first that they just made a timeline with no mysteries.
Yeah.
And so they were like, what do we do with our life? And so, yeah, this professor calls him up, who we had seen throughout the series before, but he's all, hey, I know you changed the timeline. You've shifted us again and whatever. And he's like, this has happened before. This has happened multiple times. And he's like, I've seen timeline shifts before and whatever. And he's all, I'm here to say, to acknowledge, like, this is what's happened. This is what you did and whatever. Here's where you are. And so he's basically like, he's like, I'm on the other side of the country, like doing school stuff because he's a professor, and he's all, I have spots for you here.
Yeah.
You're going to come. I'm going to help you learn things, now that you know about all this and all this that went down. And so, he's like, road trip to where I am. I have spots open for you, but he's all solve every mystery along the way. And that's where then it leads into Scooby-Doo, where are you? So then they're solving all those mysteries, making their way.
Oh, interesting.
And
wow.
So then they make their way back to Coolsville.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it all kind of like comes full circle.
And that's, so it's interesting because, at one point, when the timeline shifts, they basically get pulled away from Coolsville.
Yeah.
But again, like I had been saying, that evil entity makes sure that they stay together. Even though they aren't in Coolsville, like they're all in Crystal Cove now.
Yeah, exactly.
But then so then they make their way back to Coolsville. So
interesting. Oh.
So that's all I have for this episode.
Yeah. I think we've...
Now that you've seen another episode, do you have anything you want to see in the timeline-wise?
Timeline-wise, I think kind of how you feel. I want to see, like, the other gangs, like, houses or family or something that kind of gives me an indicator of what's shaping them and what's going to make them become who they are in the future. Yep. So, I kind of want to see more of that. Glad we got a sense of, like, the school, like what's happening there. Finally. And how they're connected there. I would like to see more, like we said. So I think we're progressing maybe towards that, hopefully.
I hope. The next episode is, I was trying to hurry and pull it up, is called Snow Place Like Home. So I'm, let's see. Yeah, so the next episode is actually the first time that they will be out of Coolsville. So they're going to go to a ski resort.
So maybe it's like a family vacation.
Yeah, will be interesting to see.
It'll probably be with Shaggy's family.
Yeah, right.
Since we've seen them, which I was glad we saw them. But I'd like to see what happens here.
Yeah, we'll have to see. So, yes, so next episode we are finally getting out of Coolsville.
Woot! Vacation for the rest of the gang. Maybe Red Herring will be there too.
Oh, probably in some way.
He'll appear. This is just what happens. So, it's funny. Okay,
so before we go, if you would like to contact us here on the podcast, we are on Twitter at SD Legend Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram. Same thing, SD Legend Podcast. We also have an email if you would like to email us directly. It is sdlegendpodcast@gmail.com. We don't really have a way for you to comment or whatever. If you do listen to these on YouTube, you can comment and we can talk to you back, talk back with you that way. You can also leave a review of our podcast on Apple Podcasts. That would also be great if you do that. Kind of give us some feedback as well. And if you like to get into contact with me specifically, you can find me on Twitter. I am at Jazz820. I'm also on Instagram at smash_vlogs. I also have a YouTube channel that's separate from the podcast where I've been doing YouTube for a few years now, but I do Scooby-Doo content plus many other types of videos and different kinds of content. So if you want to get to know me a little more personally, you can watch my videos there. You can obviously, like I said, find out more about me there. And I think that's going to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was fun.
For joining me once again.
I'm glad I got to watch another episode right after the last one.
Yes,
I've got continuity here. So thanks for having me.
I'm excited to get into a new series and like get you back and be
Yeah.
like, okay, what do you think of this series now?
Because now I kind of feel like I'm getting since I didn't really know anything about it before, I'm getting a little more feel of this, especially like you explaining this timeline to me, so hopefully that's helping everyone else.
Yes,
it's helping me, so this has been really fun.
And as of recording this episode, our first episode has gone up.
Yep.
And I've started to get feedback and whatever, and everybody loves this idea, actually.
Okay,
They're
that's
so excited about this idea of creating a timeline, whatever, which I honestly I've been so worried because, I mean, everyone's going to have their different perspective of how the timeline will go.
Yeah.
And, I totally agree, how I am thinking this timeline goes isn't going to be perfect by any means, but that's the whole reason is to, talk about it, to discuss this, and, so if anybody, again, has any different ideas or whatever as we get going, like, or if I don't notice something and you guys, hey, you didn't notice this in this episode that connects to this, let me know. But yeah, so far, I mean, again, it's only been one episode, but everybody super excited about making a timeline.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited because it gives us kind of an excuse to go more on the side of Scooby-Doo lore. I mean, it is always fun to talk about like reality Scooby, of like how it's come to be and how we've gotten to where we are with Scooby-Doo throughout history, but I just feel like within Scooby-Doo continuity throughout the Scooby-Doo franchise, we don't always talk about the actual lore and how everything's connected and whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm so excited to continue this journey.
Me too. I'm excited.
So yeah, anyways, thank you for joining this episode. We will see you next week for Chapter 8. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.